Today is Saturday, and I woke up at 4 a.m. and it is currently 10:11 on a Saturday night, and I'm still awake. Now, why am I still awake? Because when you have the performance and game that the University of Hawaii football team had against Stanford, how can you not be juiced up? How can you not be fired up? And guys and gals, college football is back, and Hawaii put on a show in week 0, and we gotta talk about it, right? So here I am filming this video to talk about the University of Hawaii Rainbow Warriors football team, who came away with a 23-20 victory against Stanford in week 0 of the 2025 season. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the first win for Hawaii against a current ACC member. So not only did they get this win to start the year 1-0, but it is also the first time in the Timmy Chang era where the Rainbow Warriors have won on national TV. And that's kind of the biggest takeaway that I'm taking from this win against Stanford, is that this year's squad, this year's team of Hawaii football, there's something different about these boys, these young men, that previous teams did not have. And one of those is, I think, is they're in their mental fortitude. Because in this game against Stanford, the University of Hawaii faced a 10-0 deficit as well as a 20-17 deficit late in the fourth quarter. If you've been following the Rainbow Warriors during their training camp this year, the big mantra for this team that they wanted to implement for this 2025 season is to start fast. Well, when you start the game down 10-0, 8 minutes into the matchup, that's the total opposite of starting fast. But unlike previous teams where they may have folded because things were not going their way, this team, they rallied together. They managed to take a 14-13 lead into the half, and they came away with a 23-20 victory after losing the lead in the fourth quarter. That is something positive to see, that this team can bounce back from adversity in the same game. Now, we can't talk about this win without talking about the quarterback in redshirt freshman Micah Alihado, who definitely played his heart out, sometimes maybe playing on one leg, but he showed what it was to be a Warrior and played through what appears to be an ankle injury and showed that what a true Warrior is to do, and lay it on the line for his team, for his teammates, for his coaches, for his school, and for this state. And that's something that you have to admire. Now, we'll get into his actual performance in a bit, but I also do want to highlight some other players that displayed that Warrior mentality as far as laying it on the line. And that starts with defensive tackle Jamar Sakona, who is coming back from a lower leg injury that he sustained last year. Now, the reason why I bring him up is because he just recently, a few weeks ago, finally got some 11-on-11 action, and I was even surprised that he was starting in this matchup against Stanford. But not only did he start, but he also was making impact with a few tackles here and there. I think he had a tackle either on first or second down on Stanford's first couple plays. So he made his presence felt early on against the Stanford team that wanted to run the football. Now, one thing about Jamar Sakona that doesn't get talked about enough is that he is in the defensive tackles room, the interior tackle with Coach Jeff Reinbold there. And that is a position group that was gutted by the transfer portal in the offseason. You know, you had one player that just was entered the transfer portal and then retired. You had another defensive tackle go to Boise State, and then you had another defensive tackle leave to go to San Diego State. Now, Jamar, when he got hurt, he still attended practices. He was still last year on the sideline during practices, watching his team from afar, either on crutches or with his head in a hoodie. You know, he was still there to support his team. So to see him be out on the field today against Stanford, you know, that's what we as, you know, Hawaii fans want to see, because that is someone that is willing to put it on the line for this state. Now, another player I want to highlight is defensive end Tariq Jones, who earlier this week, he was kind of limited when in the practices that media could attend. He really didn't participate in 11 on 11 drills or 11 on 11 contact or any of that sort, and you could definitely tell that he was kind of fighting through something. There was, I think, one play in the game early on in the first half where he had great pressure on the Stanford quarterback, and to force an incompletion, and he came up a little gimpy after that. And then we saw him in that second half get hurt, where he needed some time to get attended to, but he was still out there giving it his all. And again, that is something that you need to applaud, and that's something I wanted to highlight in this section. Now let's talk about the quarterback, Micah Alihado. He engineered 2 comebacks, right? I mean, it's in the same game, but Hawaii was trailing 10-0 to start this game, 8 minutes into the ball game, and he leads the Rainbow Warriors to a 14-13 advantage after a touchdown pass to Pofele Ashlock to give Hawaii their first points of the year, and a late touchdown pass in the second quarter to former Stanford Cardinal Jackson Harris, and he was phenomenal. I want to kind of just talk about the first half for a little bit. The first play of the game on offense, not a great play, but he shook that off. He bounced back from that. They were stacking up plays, stacking up drives, and I know he tried the deep ball a number of times and it wasn't there connecting, but he really did his best and did well in taking what the defense gave them, whether it was maybe short passes to the flat or short passes over the middle. He took what the defenses gave him and really did well. His passing stats for this game, he only threw for 210 yards. It didn't feel like it was just that little, but what he did with his completions was very effective. He completed 27 passes on 39 attempts, so that's good for about 69%. Nice. So he completed a lot of his passes, and that's what you want to see from a quarterback. And he took care of the ball. Again, he still hasn't thrown an interception since his junior year of high school. Now, his second half was definitely admirable, right? I don't know what his first half and second half stats were, but he didn't lead any touchdown drives in that second half, but he did lead 3 field goal drives, which all those points we needed because the final point total was 23-20. After Stanford came back to take the lead in the fourth quarter. And we'll get it. We'll talk about Kansei Matsuzawa's clutch kicking later in this video. But again, getting hurt early in that second half, basically playing on one leg, he played inspired football that helped lead this team to victory, right? If he's going to go out there and put it on the line, then his teammates are going to put it on the line. And he still was running around. He had I think his longest rush of this game was in that first half to set up Pofele Ashlock's receiving touchdown. I believe Micah had a longest rush of 30 yards. So he did take 4 sacks, so his rushing numbers might not look that impressive, but he did a lot of damage with his legs as well and made sure that, if the defense wasn't covering him, or if they were in man coverage, that he would take whatever yards he could get on the ground game and, get positive yards. And that's what sometimes you need to do as a quarterback, right? One of the greatest, if not the greatest quarterback of all time in football is Tom Brady. And if you look at Tom Brady, he wasn't anything spectacular athletically. He never really, outside of that 2007 season when he had Randy Moss and maybe a few times in Tampa Bay, he didn't really put up that many high numbers that you see some of the other quarterbacks do. But what he did do was win. And to win is basically you take what the defense gives you. One thing I like about Micah Alihado in this game is he didn't force the issue. He didn't try to take it upon himself to kind of force this team over the finish line, right? He was very much confident in letting Kansei Matsuzawa kick those field goals instead of trying to go for touchdowns, and as well as trusting his backs to, when there's nothing deep, he checked it down to his running backs. We have Landon Sims with 4 receptions for 32 yards. And Landon Sims, he had that big catch and run to set up that game-winning field goal by Kansei Matsuzawa. And that's what the greats do. They will throw it to the open man. And that's something that I think we needed more of last year or in the past seasons from Braden Shaker, because there were times last year or previous seasons where I felt like Braden Shaker may have been putting too much on his shoulders, which is not a bad thing, but sometimes you just need to be that kind of that point guard distributor where everybody eats instead of, maybe trying to get that deep bomb or just kind of rushing in and using your body as a battering ram, which at Braden Shaker's, size and frame, he definitely was able to withstand those hits. So yeah, great job by Micah Alihado, and definitely showing off that warrior mentality, that warrior mindset where you're just going to put it all on the line. You're going to put your body on the line. I think even in the post game, he said that he would die for his teammates. And that's just something that you have to respect. That's something you have to admire. And that's something you have to root for. Now, before I get to the next portion, I do want to highlight this new run and shoot, or this new version of the run and shoot that we're seeing with, Coach Arsenault as the offensive coordinator, as well as wide receivers coach Jared Asul, who got promoted to being the pass game coordinator for this offense. And what I think this does for Coach Timmy Chang is he gives them coaches that he trusts, that there is a collaborative effort, right? I might have a still shot from the sideline where pretty much the team is driving down the field, they're trying to get set up for that game-winning drive, and there's a shot, I think, of the three of them together, like trying to communicate with Micah, which I think Coach Timmy Chang also said that, hey, even though Micah was playing hurt, they kind of collaborated as well, where they're like, hey, what plays do you like? What plays don't like? Again, this is Micah playing with a bum ankle, and I love that, right? Sometimes, in any profession, any business, any job, any sport, sometimes people want to be the man, right? But in order for all of us to succeed, you need to work together and collaborate. And that's what I feel like this team and these coaching staff is at a healthy spot now in the coaching and the coaching staff. So kudos to the coaches for doing this. Now, the last thing I want to highlight is a couple of players who saw their stock rise in this game against Stanford. And a lot of these players that I'm going to, or the three of these players that I'm going to mention, were players that I think fans were a bit questionable about heading into the season in their starting spot, right? And that starts with the safety, Kilinahe Mendialo Jensen, who a lot of fans last year, they were nervous about him starting, but he showed why he deserves to be out on the field today with that clutch interception against, that pretty much saved the day for the University of Hawaii, because Stanford was driving. I believe there was about maybe 6 minutes or so on the clock. They were in Hawaii territory, up 20-17. They really just needed to run up the clock, maybe kick another field goal to put really pressure on a Hawaii offense that had a banged up Alihado. But Kilinahe Mendialo Jensen, he came up big on that interception where the defense was caught in man coverage, because there was a player that was in fly motion or jet motion, and you on the play you see that the defensive back for Hawaii is trailing him in man coverage, but he's deeper downfield, so he was not going to reach the arrow in time. And I believe Nahe was either on man coverage with the running back. He saw the fake handoff, and the quarterback was rolling out to his left. He took a really nice angle in pursuit. And because he took that angle, when the quarterback tried to throw to the left flat to the receiver that was in motion, Nahe was able to jump up in the air with a heck of an athletic play and pick that off to give Hawaii the ball back. But Stanford had a good play design, but it was a better athletic play, a better defensive play, a better read, a better heads-up play by Kilinahe Mendialo Jensen. And that saved Hawaii's comeback attempt, and definitely was a hero for this game. Now, another player that fans also in the secondary were not sure about this season is Jaheim Wilson-Jones at the cornerback position. Now, Jaheim Wilson-Jones, he did kind of have some rough spots last year. And again, I think that's more so because of injuries, right? Because when you look at last year's depth chart, you had Cam Stone, you had Sebo Brown, you had Verdell Edwards. You would go into that season thinking that those were your top three players at cornerback. But Verdell Edwards did not play at all last year. And Seba Brown also had a couple injuries after that opening game. Now, there was also other corners, but Jaheim Wilson-Jones was definitely one that had an increased playing time. And it seems like that experience last year, even though it was not a winning season for the University of Hawaii, that's playing dividends now because he came up with a third down stop against Stanford where the game was tied 20-20. It was under 2 minutes. I believe the 2-minute timeout had already come and gone. It was 3rd and 7. The University of Hawaii was in cover 3, and Jaheim made a play. He read the concept. Stanford was trying to run a dagger concept where the inside slot receiver was running a deep clear out route so that the outside receiver can run a deep in route. They'll take a 90-degree angle and kind of run like a dig route. And Jaheim read that perfectly to force a punt so that Hawaii could get the ball back and Alihado and company can march them down the field to set up Kansei Matsuzawa for the game-winning field goal. So again, a lot of complementary football, a lot of pieces working together in concert so that Hawaii could come away with this 23-20 victory. Now, the man of the hour, who I've saved for last, in Kansei Matsuzawa. I mean, I only save him for last because he is definitely the story that a lot of media members will either write about or talk about. So, but what a job for a player, again, learn how to kick via YouTube. That was a story coming into last season. And he came up big. Definitely, not only did he get a game-time field goal, which I'm pretty sure might be the first of his career, but he also got that game-winning field goal from 38 yards out with no time left on the clock to give Hawaii a Week 0 win on primetime television in front of a national audience. But one thing that Kansei said in the postgame that kind of warms our heart is that his parents were also in town. And, for everybody who knows that Asian families, it's A's. You got to get A's. And he definitely got an A today, going 3 for 3, 100% on his field goal attempt. So Kansei, shout out to you. Definitely making his family proud, his parents proud that was in attendance for this game. Overall, great win for this program. And again, as I said at the top of this video, this team is different.